You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is 3/24/21. And are you thinking about a startup? You're thinking about where the best place to do it is? Maybe you've got flexibility. You could do it any place in the world. Do you want to go to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, Atlanta in the US, or New York or LA? Well, those questions and more can be answered. You just need to look at startupblink.com. That's startupblink.com. Ellie David, one of the principals of the company, is here with us now. It's purely an informational tool that will really help you to clarify your goals, the quality of startups that are taking place in a particular market area, and perhaps where best to do your startup. Ellie, it's great to have you on the show. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions and you want some more information, perhaps where your city ranks here, just send us an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Ellie, it's great to have you on. So, and again, it's startupblink.com. This website looks like it took a monumental effort. You've got, I think you've got 1,000 cities listed there. The least good one on the list seems to be in Venezuela. I don't quite understand that. I thought that Venezuela was a hot seat of socialism and everybody's happy getting along. You'd think startups would be plentiful there, wouldn't you?
Thank you, Kerry, first of all, for inviting me and pronouncing my name correctly. That's very, very rare. So Ellie here. Venezuela, you would think it would be a socialist miracle, and not the case. I was actually there, Kerry, in 2007. And back in the Chavez days, and it was a miracle. But it was a miracle when oil was at $160, and it was outstanding. I have to tell you, really, people were not working so much, and everyone was so happy. And I'm an economist, I have to say. So when I was there, I was trying to understand it, and I said to myself, there might be something here. You know, I can't get it. So I do want to say that I had a period that I thought that they're onto something, and of course, unfortunately, it's not the case.
They were on something. It was the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And this is what socialism always happens. Going back to when the Pilgrims stepped off the Mayflower, and at that time they were communal farmers, and they almost starved to death. It wasn't until they split up the land and each person could produce everything they were capable of producing. And if you didn't produce, you didn't eat. And then all of a sudden the colony took off. But anyways, we don't need to go back in history. We just need to look at what's happening now, and you can understand it. So interesting, what I was surprised about is the number one startup mecca is the San Francisco Bay in California. Obviously, they're a lot better at starting up companies than they are at getting people to use the facilities, aren't they?
Yeah, San Francisco is, there is a lot of doom and gloom about the future of San Francisco and so on, that San Francisco is going to be anywhere and so on. Honestly, they created such a giant gap that it doesn't really matter. I'm not from the US, I'm from Israel, so I don't really know what's going on there, but I will tell you that when you have such a big unfair advantage, not unfair, actually fair. They were the first to innovate. We have to give them a lot of credit. When you have this creation of a story or a narrative that is so strong, honestly, it's very hard to mess it up. There isn't that much that you can do to destroy a story like this, because everyone knows it's the best place. And although people know that there is cost of living, high cost of living, and probably a few issues that are more on the economical level or the social level and so on, still everyone knows that in the startup world, you want to get close to the place where all the connected people and all the high quality people are. And now it's by definition San Francisco. It's the meeting place. Just like, if you had to meet a friend You meet them at the town hall or close to the municipality or wherever, or the big park. That's where everyone is going, even without scheduling meetings, because they know that this is going to be the mecca where everyone is. So San Francisco does have a massive advantage still. I do want to tell you, Kerry, that this advantage is closing a little bit. We see this in 2017 when we launched. They were about 8 times better than any ecosystem out there. Now they're about 3.5 times better. And I'm going to give you a spoiler alert from our 2021 report. The margins are decreasing. The margins are decreasing, and San Francisco is still gonna, even if the city is continuing to lose its appeal, it's gonna take at least, I think, 6-7 years before we would see a real contender. But it's not as big of a gap as before. It was really, before it was like a team from the NBA playing the little leagues, league game, and now it's closing. So some bad things are happening there, but it's still, with all the respect, a massive ecosystem, a real supernova. And I'm hoping it will continue this way, because most of our innovation in the last few decades have happened there. There are lots of innovators, risk takers, people that are going there from the gold rush up until today. It's beautiful to see. And I have a feeling that when, things are going to get a little bit more aware, that people in the city are going to get a little bit more aware that the trend is not so good, there's going to be a little bit of awakening in order to preserve this beautiful status of this beautiful city. But still, totally number one. Who's gonna go and so let me actually do a quick speak a little bit about the rankings themselves. We're talking here about a mathematical formula that is running, as you mentioned, Kerry, in startupblink.com. You would see a map with almost 100,000 entities, a very big sample. We're also working with a few global data partners like Crunchbase and Meetup and so on, supplementing a lot of data. We built a formula that ranks the ecosystem of 1,000 cities, 100 countries. The formula has about 35 parameters. You can read about it. I'm not going to tell you all the story. There is a methodology part in the global report that we released, but it's very well thought. We're really spending a lot of time because we know that people are making decisions based on this. So back to your question, San Francisco is still there. The city that is closing gaps the fastest is currently at number 6 in the world, and that's Beijing. It's growing amazingly. Every report that we do, it jumps by 10 places or 5 places or so on. In the last report, it jumped by 11 places to arrive to number 6. I still think there is a long way to wait until there's going to be a change. Personally, I'm hoping there wouldn't be. I just love San Francisco and the creation and the beauty and the freedom and a lot of the good things that happen there. But definitely there are a few contenders globally that are rising.
All right. Well, really interesting. What I also found interesting on your list, shocked me, in fact, is that when we use total score, number 2, who do you think it is out there? Who do you think is number 2 on the startup ecosystem ranking? Would you be surprised if I told you New York City, a place where they absolutely loathe business? They can't wait to shut them down, lock them down, overtax them, tax them so they move to another state, another country. They don't care. As long as you leave New York alone. That just shocked me, Ellie.
Yes. So let me tell you, the thing is that when a city is becoming very, very successful, the policymaker can become a little bit more, a prestigious mindset, or maybe even a closed club mindset, because the city is successful. So in a way, I have to say, it's a very natural process. You see it also in San Francisco. When a city has so much success, it tends not to try too much. It would not market itself. It would not try to welcome and so on, because by definition, there is success. So in a way, it's a little bit annoying, but still a very natural thing that is basically saying, look, we're so good that you have to try really hard to arrive to us. Some of those cities, by the way, would prefer to keep the quality high by making sure that only, entrepreneurs with very high, resources, with a lot of investment, would be able to do business in the city because they don't want to lower the quality of the business in the city as well. Again, a little bit annoying, but then again, when you're winning, you're winning. And the cities that are losing are actually the cities where you have very high quality public sector officials. Because if you're let's say one of our partners in the United States is the Economic Development Corporation of Wisconsin, and cities like Madison and Milwaukee and so on that are also doing very well. And you see that in Canada, for example, we're working with the Economic Development Corporation of Kingston and Edmonton, again, not the Toronto and Vancouver. The cities that are a little bit not considered as historical hubs are the cities where you would have a public sector that is totally geared towards business. And I honestly think it's a natural process. When you're up, you don't care that much. When your starting point is a little bit lower, you're going to try hard and you're going to be very, very welcoming. And I think it's totally okay, to be honest.
All right. Well, that's interesting. And hey, any countries on this list that are really surprising to you personally after having compiled this data for all these years?
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Goldterra Resource Corp is a gold exploration company that has assembled a highly prospective district-scale land position on the doorstep of the city of Yellowknife in Canada's Northwest Territories. Goldterra is currently focused on expanding and delineating gold resources at the company's Yellowknife City Gold Project with a goal of discovering over 5 million ounces. With ready access to infrastructure and multiple high-grade gold discoveries, Goldterra is on track to re-establishing Yellowknife as one of the premier gold mining districts in Canada. Goldterra trades as YGT in Toronto and YGTFF on the OTC. For more information, go to goldterracorp.com. That's goldterracorp.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network. The information you need to thrive now more than ever.
Yes, so actually when you go to startuplink.com, below the map, you would see the ranking tables. And over there is also a button to switch to the countries. So we're doing both the countries and the cities. If you're switching to the countries over there, you're going to see, once again, the United States well ahead of everyone else. You would see also the gaps in the total score. Below that, United Kingdom. Something interesting that happened with United Kingdom, there was a little bit of doom and gloom with Brexit back in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And we've seen that actually they managed to maintain a very, very strong position. Although they had Brexit, there was a little bit of a feeling that a lot of businesses are going to run away from United Kingdom. Didn't really happen. So the United Kingdom is super strong at number 2. The third country, and I'm not biased, is Israel at number 3. The country's ranking is done per population, and what's happening in Israel is actually pretty astounding as for the startup ecosystem and also the actual impact it has on the economy, on the revenues, and so on. Canada, number 4, also doing relatively well. And then after that, Germany. Interesting locations that I think are counterintuitive. One of them would be the small country of Estonia at number 11. It's a country of less than 2 million people that is doing well. A lot of people are talking about it as a digital nation. Blockchain and everything is digitalized, so that's pretty cool. Finland at number 13. Once again, a very small country. China at number 14, but China has leaped 13 places. If it does another leap of 13 places, it's going to be number 1. But of course, it's harder to leap as you're advancing. But really, some very interesting things are happening in China now as for development of the ecosystem. Let me see if I can see another strong country in South America. The strongest one would be Brazil at number 20, definitely the biggest hub in South America. And another interesting country would be Taiwan. Taiwan is at number 30. Very strong ecosystem. Good things are happening there. Giant companies in the past, like semiconductor companies and so on. And now they're really trying to build a very strong ecosystem. So Taiwan is one more of those interesting locations.
That is really fascinating there. If you were going to start a business today, is there any particular place you would go to?
Yeah, it really depends on what are your ambitions. Because if you're trying to conquer the world, then with all the, let's say, unwelcoming, if it exists, I haven't been in San Francisco, I just hear story, but with everything that exists and so on, if you're really trying to conquer the world, you have only one place to go to, which is San Francisco. I'm talking about if you have aspirations to build a Google or a Facebook, the next Google or a Facebook, you should probably go to San Francisco. However, I have to say that it really depends also on your vertical. For example, if you're interested in doing something that has to do with hardware and IoT, you should probably go to a place like Boston, which is doing great on hardware and IoT, Shenzhen in China as well, Beijing, Taipei, even Moscow. There are some locations that are doing really, really good on specific vertical. If you're trying to build a fintech startup, New York and London are going to be your first pick, because each city is trying to excel specifically in a specific vertical. Anyone other than San Francisco. San Francisco is just good at everything. Doesn't matter what it is. San Francisco is probably going to be first. But specifically for verticals, yeah, you have to check what are the best verticals in each city. I think it's worthwhile to spend a lot of time on the decision of where should you build your company. Most of us, Gary, are kind of like building our company where we're born. It makes a lot of sense. That's where our friends are, and that's where our family is, and so on and so on. But I don't think most of us understand the alternative cost of starting a company in a place that is underperforming. And the thing is that this alternative cost, the beauty, or actually the tragedy, is that you will never see it. Because let's say if you're staying in a relatively small town and it doesn't have a lot of a startup activity and so on, you would feel comfortable and the cost of living is good and you wouldn't really feel a pain. The pain is the opportunities that you're missing, the things that did not happen and you don't even know about. That if you would be in a place like London or New York or Boston and so on, those things would happen. So I'm always telling people, even though you don't think you're hurting because you're in a low-cost place and everything is great and you're enjoying life and so on, your startup is greatly suffering from those missed opportunities that actually only happen in the really established hubs. By the way, those hubs don't have to be necessarily very, very big cities. There are some examples, for example, Boulder, Colorado, which is doing very well with a relatively small population. Other example would be Austin, Texas, which was not considered to be a startup ecosystem, but is now really thriving, and it's great to see. There is an exodus, by the way, from San Francisco to Austin. So it really depends on your goals and ambitions.
Absolutely. And hey, two things. Austin. So now we have Tesla Motors taking a huge stake in Texas. They're going to supposedly build their Tesla Semi, 18-wheeler truck there. They're moving operations there, building a Terafactory, batteries, all this stuff. What happens when a huge company like that, or an Amazon, basically Seattle's 11 on the list. Amazon kind of been the epicenter of Seattle for many years, and Microsoft, and that led to their elevated standing. When you see a Tesla move to Austin, what do you think that means for the city as a tech leader into the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, honestly, I would say I don't know, because your intuition would tell you that this is a very positive thing that happens. What we've seen with startup ecosystems is that actually when the big companies are moving and creating a lot of jobs in a specific location, potential entrepreneurs that would have started their own business would now go and secure a 9-to-5 in a corporate for very highly paid salaries. So I'm not saying it's necessarily bad. It might be extremely good, but I can't tell you that the impact is 100% positive. There are some downsides here as well, because by securing these 9-to-5s and really high salaries, people are taking less risks. But then again, it really depends on where you are. For example, in Israel, we have all the Google and Intels and so on. Most people are staying there for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and then leaving and building their startup, because In Israel, it's a little bit a sign of shame of working for a corporate and not trying to do your own thing. So it's very cultural. If you go to places like, I don't know, Spain, Greece, Portugal, and so on, and you would get a job in Google, let's say, and you would try to tell your family that you're going to leave Google to build a startup, what would be very, very welcomed in Israel of what took you so long would be very frowned upon in other locations with a different mentality. And, each city in the USA also has its own mentality. Some of them are very hungry for risk. Some of them are very risk averse. So it's pretty interesting. The more that we're in the field of startup ecosystem research and also consulting, we work with a lot of governments and municipalities. I have to say that sometimes impacts that seem very, very clear on what they're going to do are going the other way. So honestly, over here, I don't have a really good answer.
All right. Well, hey, that's interesting. One thing is that the culture at Tesla is not a 9-to-5 culture. They're very much innovators, disruptive technologies. Every business they're in, they're disrupting. So we'll just have to see what happens. Hey, it's really been great having you on, Ellie, and really enlightening as well. The things you think you know aren't necessarily true. So you should take a look at Startup Blink. That's startupblink.com. And if you got a question for Ellie or myself, you can email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. Don't forget to go over to Financial Survival Network, sign up for our newsletter. Ellie, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Kerry.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.